All right, today we're going to talk about fluency instruction, why it's a good thing, and how we assess it, and what kind of instructional practices we can use in our classroom to help kids build their fluency. So, today, what you should learn or be able to do is to define fluency and identify why it's important in terms of developing students' literacy abilities. You'll be able to distinguish the importance of phrasing and how it plays into fluency instruction. You're going to review how to assess fluency and compare the differences between words correct per minute scores and qualitative fluency scales. You'll explore and reflect on activities that improve fluency, and you'll select one activity and provide more detailed information and share that with others. All right, so let's start. What is fluency? Well, fluency is a combination of three things: automaticity, that's how quickly and how automatically a student decodes words. So when a child sees a word, they should be able to read it automatically, not slowly by sounding out each word. So fluency can be seen in single word reading, and it could also be seen in continuous text reading. Okay, so automaticity. The next one is rate, and that means how many words per minute a student reads correctly. And then the last one is prosody. And prosody is how well a student is able to make his or her oral reading sound like speech, right? So prosody includes expression, intonation, emphasis, pitch, phrasing. Prosody is super important and often forgotten by many teachers when they assess fluency. It's not just rate, that prosody plays a huge role in fluency. So, why is fluency important? Well, the more fluent children are, the more easily they decode unknown words. Fluency is highly correlated with comprehension, and children who are fluent are more likely to enjoy reading and read more. We're going to watch a short video. This is about 7 minutes long. And this video is about phrasing and how important that is. Okay?
Although much attention is currently given to the importance of reading fluency, the emphasis is often limited to measuring accuracy and rate. But fluent reading is not merely a product of reading, but a contributor to reading proficiency. Researchers have found a close relationship between fluency and reading comprehension. Consider the difference between two readers as they read the same text.
My dog Willie likes to eat breakfast. My dog Willie likes to eat breakfast.
In addition to speed and word recognition, fluent reading involves expression, appropriate phrasing, and intonation.
Good night, Space Boy. Sleep tight, she said. Pete had a big drum. Mary had a big trumpet. And Titch had a little wooden whistle. And Titch's seed grew and grew and grew.
Oh my goodness, it did.
An important feature of fluent reading is phrasing. When readers pause appropriately between phrases, clauses, and sentences, they can access language structure units that support the meaning of the text.
Oh no, Mom, called Zach. The baby is crying again. Is he hungry again? I'm hungry, said the frog. I'm starving, said the bee. And the big brown beetle said, what about me?
These teachers are thinking about what contributes to a child's phrased and fluent reading.
Well, I know that you've been thinking really hard about working with your students to help them become phrased in their fluent reading.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you think about, let's say, when selecting a book to foster that?
Well, one of the very first things I think about is the child's interest, their background knowledge, their life experiences, because I want to make sure that I'm choosing a book that they can relate to, that they understand, the message of the text, so that as they're reading, their phrasing and fluency kind of follows along because they understand what's happening in the story.
And something else that that I like to think about with my children is their oral language. In my conversations with them, what am I noticing about their language structures, and to really be thinking about that as far as book selection.
I want to be a careful observer of what the child knows. I mean, it's my job as their teacher to know what they know, and not just in terms of their oral language, but also in terms of letters and words. And do they understand how books work? Do they understand the punctuation marks, like when someone's talking, or the places where your voices stop when you're reading?
So, phrasing in fluent reading is influenced by a child's prior knowledge, control of oral language structures, and ability to recognize and quickly use visual information in print, such as words and letter clusters. What can teachers do to help children put all these sources of information together for phrased and fluent reading?
So, Sherry, where do you tend to notice that your children are sounding phrased and that the fluency is coming along?
The best place for me to notice that is in their familiar reading. These are books that they've seen before, books that they love, books that they've worked out all the tough stuff, and so that frees them up to kind of experiment with how their reading sounds.
Mm-hmm. And it's important that they can monitor on how their reading sounds,
right,
isn't it?
I got a plastic pool for my birthday. If you wait a minute, I'll show you what's in it.
Awesome job. You made it sound like talking. Great job.
Effective teachers also understand the importance of selecting and introducing books that will support a child's phrased and fluent reading.
Am I selecting books that fit their natural language, or is it going to be too much of a stretch? Because if it's too much of a stretch, it won't come easy for the child as far as putting it together to sound phrased and fluent. And thinking about selecting books that with the goal of them sounding phrased and fluent, those are some other things we have to think about.
Right.
Are there a lot of unknown words in this book? Are there going to be enough words that the child knows and feels comfortable with that can help move them along?
A brief introduction to new books also supports phrased and fluent reading. The teacher can make the children familiar with the story or plot, as well as unusual language structures, names, and new words. And teachers can support phrased and fluent reading by demonstration and prompting.
Oh, no, Mom.
Oh, no. Oh,
Put it together. It's okay.
oh no, Mom, cried Zach. The baby is crying again.
Good job.
It's a good thing I can read to myself, said Space Boy.
Put this together.
It's a good thing I can read to myself, said Space Boy.
You're really good at listening to how you sound like talking.
This is not a stopping place, but it is a slowing down place. Watch what Mrs. Shaw puts here. So we're not stopping, but we're going to slow down. That's a comma.
As they attempt to solve problems while reading, flexible readers adjust their speed to suit demands of the text. They slow down when working through things and speed it back up. And they are fast with the things they know.
Miss Lee said to her class, "It's time to go to the swimming pool." "I don't want to go swimming," said Yasmin. I don't like the cold water, but she had to go with the class.
To monitor a child's progress, teachers can record how the child's reading sounded on the running record form. Did the reading sound like talking? Is the reader learning how to pause appropriately, read in phrases, and use punctuation, pitch, and stress to get the message? And are these behaviors flexible and changing over time? In summary, fluent reading involves putting all sources of information, meaning, language structures, and print knowledge together in an integrated and flexible manner to comprehend text. When this happens, phrased and fluent reading is not simply a product of reading, but a major contributor to reading proficiency.
Okay, Okay, I would like for you to take just 1 minute and write down anything that you remember from this video. Okay, I'll just time you very quickly. So write down anything that you remember that jumped out at you. You may start. Okay, so we're going to keep going. We have a few more slides. So next we're going to talk about assessing fluency. So in that past video, we saw that you can informally note how a student is reading fluently or not through a running record, which is a great place to make note. But we can also formally assess fluency by giving students a book on their instructional level or on their independent level. And what we want to do is we want to time them for 1 minute. And so when we time them for 1 minute, we would conduct a running record and identify the errors, and then we would calculate that. So we would take the total number of words read minus the errors, and that equals the words correct per minute. So remember, we're setting the timer for 1 minute. We let the child read for a minute. We stop the timer and we mark where that child stops reading. And then we calculate the errors, and then we get the words correct per minute. Okay, and that gives us a percentage. And then we can also simply listen to the child read, and we can do holistic scoring. So we can score for phrasing, expression, accuracy, punctuation, and appropriate rate. So let's look at, here are the steps to assessing a child. So first you would identify a book or a passage for the student to read. Make a copy for you and one for your student. Have your timer ready, and then ask your student to read and set the timer for 1 minute. Mark the errors. If it's a self-correction, it does not count as an error. Okay, and then once the student finishes, subtract the errors from the total number of words read in 1 minute. We're going to practice this in class, so we're not going to go over it anymore, but I want to show you next what the oral reading rates are. Now again, this is based on research from 2002, and it's grades 2 through 8. And this resembles Texas oral reading rates almost perfectly. So if you notice here, if you look at second grade, a second grade student should probably be falling between 82 to 23. So we see 23 is the lower 25 percentile, and 82 would be the upper percentile. In the winter, we want them to grow from 82 words correct per minute to 106 words correct per minute until finally 124 words correct per minute. So you'll see that we want to actually assess fluency at minimum 3 times over the course of a year to see growth. Now, many teachers will evaluate fluency many times, once a month, once a week, depending on the child. And you'll see here, this goes all the way down to 8th grade, so you'll see how the numbers change. And this is just a good indicator to show where that child falls in their oral reading rates. Okay. Another way of assessing fluency is to look at it kind of holistically. So this comes from the National Assessment of Education Progress, NAEP, and they assess oral reading fluency nationally. And so this scale has been tested and piloted and used for 35 years. And basically what it shows here is that if you look at level one would be your lowest level, where the student reads primarily word for word Occasionally, 2 words or 3-word phrases may occur, but these are infrequent. So level 1 would be the lowest level. Level 2, child reads primarily in 2-word phrases with some 3 or 4-word groupings. Word groupings may seem awkward and unrelated to larger context of sentence or passage. Level 3, again, we move up. The reader reads primarily in 3 or 4-word phrase groups. Some smaller groupings may be present. However, the majority of phrasing seems appropriate and preserves the syntax of the author. Little or no expression interpretation is present. So we see kind of more phrasing going on in level 3, but missing the expression. And then level 4, of course, is the highest level. We primarily see that child using phrasing groups, possibly some repetitions, but mostly it does not detract from the structure of this story, and that the reader preserves the author's syntax. So they're reading within expression and interpretation. All right, so we'll practice assessing fluency in class. In the meantime, as you're doing running records, as you're listening to children read, pay really close attention to how they read, how it sounds, and listen for the automaticity, listen to their rate, and pay very close attention to their prosody. Okay, so next, when we notice that children need support in fluency, there's many fun and effective methods to support fluency. First of all, one is repeated reading. And repeated reading is where children are reading a passage multiple times while receiving guidance or feedback. So they can get feedback from their peers or their parents, teachers. It's usually helpful. There's been research that shows that lower achieving readers probably need guidance from teachers or parents, and that they benefit more from skilled guidance. So repeated reading could simply be reading the same book or reading that familiar book multiple times. Okay? All right, so 4 ways to build oral reading fluency. First of all, model good reading to your students. So reading aloud every day, 2 or 3 times a day, modeling what that fluency sounds like. Provide oral support for readers. So by choral reading, where you read together, you're modeling that and providing support. Paired reading, where one reader is reading with the other, and you always want to make sure that you have one reader who's slightly more fluent than the other, so there's a little support there. And then using recorded material, so having children listen to books as they read along is very important. Offer plenty of practice opportunities, so let kids do repeated readings. And those repeated readings can be very fun, using different kinds of books, like poems for 2 voices, and readers' theater. And then encourage fluency through phrasing. So you can actually teach kids how to phrase, how to put those words together, and encouraging that. Here are some activities that you can use to improve fluency. So a read aloud, which we've talked about, shared reading, choral reading, paired reading, tape recorded reading, paired repeated readings, time readings, poetry club, dramatic readings, karaoke club, cross-age tutoring, and readers' theater. All right, so one thing that you're going to do is pick one of those activities that improves fluency. You're going to generate some ideas and examples related to this activity. And you're going to go online and find some ideas, some examples, maybe a lesson plan or a video, and then you're going to share that information on Padlet. So we're all familiar with Padlet. What I provided here was a URL link, and I've also have the QR code here. So if you have your phone or your tablet, you can scan this QR code and it should take you to Padlet. So we're going to come back to this page, but what I'd like for you to do is to look at these activities right now. And we're going to practice Reader's Theater in class. That's why this one is bolded, but you can certainly pick this activity. So pick one of these activities right now. Write it down in your notes, and then we're going to come back to it. Okay, you might want to pick one or two, but pick one for sure that you're going to look more closely at. Okay, so we're going to come back to that, and I'm just going to review a few of these activities. So a read aloud. Basically know what a read aloud is. To model fluency, improve comprehension. Choose a good, how do you choose a good time to read? You set the atmosphere, you select appropriate book, you practice, and you read it. So we know read alouds are very effective. When you're reading, make sure to set the stage, think aloud as you read, as you're modeling, have the students respond during and after the reading. So they can respond orally, visually, textually, or physically. Choral reading, we've also talked about, is where you read together. So it also improves fluency, prosody. You can do this 5 to 10 minutes every day, or you can even turn them into performances. So you can select a text to be read, and that can be read in unison or in small groups. You make the text visible, so like a poster in your room or visually on the Elmo. You allow students time to practice reading, either their poems or their stories, and then you can have performance time. And remember, choral reading is when groups of people read the same text together. Okay. All right, another instructional practice is paired repeated reading. So paired repeated reading is really nice in that you put kids together where they can repeat reading but do it together in kind of fun instructional ways. So you would divide the students into pairs. You can select a short passage or something interesting, preferably just above their instructional level. And then you have each student read the passage 3 times orally while the partner listens. And then the partner comments on how well it was read. Did it sound like talking? Did it have great expression? Was it slow? Was it fast? And then the students switch roles. And so they're giving each other feedback. You can do timed repeated readings. And I often do this with kids. They love to time themselves, and then we can create charts to help them see their progress. So you can group kids and then in 2 or 3, and then you can have kids observe themselves reading, or you can have them listen to their partner and chart those. So how we do this, we could choose a passage for a student to read that is on the student's instructional level, that's focused on the students' in their interests. We would take 100 to a 200 word excerpt from that passage, and then we would time it. So here's some more steps here. We could set goals for the reading rate and the accuracy using the median rates that we looked at earlier. We can have the student read the passage silently and then ask him or herself to read it orally. So this is really important, to give the child time to read it silently. Do not time the first oral reading. I find this is pretty stressful on kids. So you can use this time to coach the student on phrasing and using expression. And then time the student while he or she reads, marking the miscues that she reads, and then mark the student's speed and error rate on the chart. And then review the miscues with the child, but be sure to comment on the child's prosody goals or their fluency goals. And then have the student reread the passage again silently. So we have this read it silently, and then they read it out loud as you listen and mark their errors and time them. And then you have them read it again silently. So you can have the student reread the passage oral many different times. And you can do this once a week. You can do this twice a week. And you can have the student create goals for themselves, use a chart to mark off when they've reached those goals. So it's a very physical way of seeing how that child is improving. All right, another idea is called Poetry Club. And Poetry Club basically is creating time every day in class or after class or during lunch to practice reading poems and then performing those poems. So you can make poetry a part of your class or your class library. You can read several of your favorite poems out loud to your students. Explain that they will have an opportunity to share a poem or a song lyric of their own. And then share several books of poetry and have students select performance pieces from their books. So you could give time in class every day for kids to select a poem and to practice those poems. For example, if they select poems on Friday, give them 5 minutes each day, Monday through Thursday, to prepare for a performance on Friday. Invite students to sign up for their performances during Poetry Club and then have them scheduled. And then finally, at Poetry Club time, form a circle and provide an audience for the performance and a celebration. Use a little snapping. Kids love Poetry Club. Readers Theater is also a wonderful way of encouraging kids to reread passages. It improves fluency, it helps kids visualize what they're reading, and it builds comprehension. First of all, the goal is to help them reread so that they reread for a purpose and they reread for an audience. It requires no sets, no costumes, no props, and no memorized lines. So Readers Theater is literally reading a script, but being able to read it well. So here is a few steps. So we would create heterogeneous groups. So these are mixed levels groups based on their interest, not their ability, right? And then children would choose a book. They might read that book first together, or it might have been read by the teacher. And then they're given a script. And that script has different parts. So the students in that group would choose a different part. And then they would practice reading their part for many days. And they become very familiar with the text, reading their part, maybe taking it home, practicing at home. They're not memorizing this text, but they are reading it fluently. Okay? So it enhances comprehension, and the goal is to perform the Readers Theater to their class or to their school. It also really encourages students to have this character interpretation, to understand how would the characters say this part? Would they say it slowly or sadly, or would they use excitement? So there's a lot of interpretation. And in order to successfully perform, the students must have a deep knowledge of the story. So we always encourage them not just to read their part, but to read other parts. Readers Theater can be used across the curriculum. So in every subject area, students can work to adopt a scene from a historical fiction novel about the Oklahoma Dust Bowl. And so that's the picture you see here, Into the Dust. They can integrate social studies and language arts, and they can use the book as a resource for their script. So not only can they read scripts, but we can have students write scripts. Finally, here are the basic steps to Readers Theater. The teacher reads aloud the book upon which the script is based. Students read the script independently while the teacher gives feedback. Students practice their scripts in groups. Students prepare for performances. Teachers and students evaluate reading, writing, and performances, and then students write more scripts. So this process here can take 5 days, it can take 2 weeks, depending on how much time you have in your class. All right, one more very important thing to talk about for fluency. The main activity that stops fluency is round robin reading. You probably all remember round robin reading. We've done it before in our own childhood experiences, and we've seen round robin reading. But the truth is, it's not very effective. So how is oral reading different from round robin reading? Well, round robin reading is when kids sit in a circle and they go around one at a time reading a passage or a part of a story. Typically, that reading is not practiced and it's performed because they have to read aloud in front of others. So round robin reading is one particular type of oral reading involving unpracticed performance, interrupted reading, and long passages of text, with each student reading a short passage. Why round robin reading is problematic? Well, it provides students with an inaccurate view of reading. Reading is not about sitting in a circle, reading out loud to others without any practice. It works against students becoming fluent readers. Usually they're scared. They don't want to read out loud unless they're very confident and they love it. It causes faulty reading habits instead of effective reading strategies. So again, it's about pronouncing the words correctly in front of others instead of actually comprehending and understanding the story. It causes unnecessary sub-vocalization, and that's just a big word for saying that children are constantly trying to pronounce and articulate those words in ways that aren't necessary in order to comprehend the story, and it hampers listening comprehension. If you've ever been in a round robin reading situation and you've been asked to read on the spot, you're usually not paying attention to what other people are reading. You're just paying attention to how you sound, and that's why it hampers listening comprehension. More problems? Well, it takes up a lot of time. It causes inattentive behaviors, right? Leading to discipline problems, kids looking around, not wanting to do it. It's a source of anxiety and embarrassment. There's not a single instructional purpose that supports the use of round robin reading. So why use oral reading? So oral reading, when done as rereading with partners, timed rereading, reading theater, poetry club, all of these things are oral reading because they support practice, right? And they support children rereading for a purpose. The reason why we do this is because it whets students' appetites for reading. They enjoy it. They enjoy sharing and performing. It helps beginning or struggling readers better understand how speaking is related to other language arts in their lives. It helps develop in listening comprehension, and it assists students in developing numerous skills associated with reading, including comprehension. It promotes language learning for those who are learning a second language. It can help build confidence, develop comprehension, help kids determine the strategies that they use while reading, provide a means to share reading programs with others, provides additional reading time, right, with a purpose, and it addresses national reading and language arts standards. All right, so we've come to our end of our presentation. So here is that slide. So what you're going to do now is pick one of those activities you wrote down on your notes. And I would like for you to search online for maybe an example or a lesson plan or something that exemplifies this activity. And then I'd like for you to go to Padlet, and I'd like you to upload that information and describe what you found. You can use the URL on this last slide, or you can take your phone or your tablet and scan this QR code, and it should pop up Padlet on your phone. All right, that's the end. Look forward to seeing your presentations and your activities on Padlet. All right, thank you.